Good evening. After months of debate and division, the government has finally ratified the Maastricht Treaty. But it happened as Europe's money markets were in turmoil and the ERM was virtually dead.
The little-known UK Independence Party, or UKIP, are only 3 years old. They average just over 3% of the vote in the European elections, but they're planning to fight every seat at the general election. Fed up with what they regard as a pro-European conspiracy among the major parties, the UKIP believe their time has come.
What started as a murmur in the pubs and clubs and wherever people congregate in this country is now beginning to reach a crescendo roar. And what people are saying is, get Britain out.
It confirms my belief that it's about time that my own country recognise that our interests are best served by not being a member of this club. Most people in the UK thought we joined a free trade area, but this crisis demonstrates it is anything but that. While the UK has obeyed EU law to the letter, other countries are running a cart and horse through the rulebook. The level playing field is about as level as the decks of the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. Prime Minister, 6 months ago you came here, you impressed everybody with your reform agenda, even me. I said if you achieved your goals, I would support you. Economic reform was the cry. And within a couple of weeks, the Commission had proposed to scrap 68 new laws. I thought, crikey, perhaps Blair's going to do it. Perhaps he really is going to reform and change. But no, under your presidency, there have been 3,350 new legislative acts. Total failure on economic reform. On the budget, you said there'd be no surrender of the UK rebate. Well, it seems to me that you've given away £7 billion of British taxpayers' money for nothing in return. Why should British taxpayers pay for new sewers in Budapest, for a new underground system in Warsaw, when our own public services are crumbling in London? Why should we pay a penny piece into an organisation whose accounts have not been signed off by the auditors for the last 11 years in a row?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, all of you. Right. There are, in my experience in politics, there are 3 groups of people. There's first of all the reactionaries. And let me just tell you, sir, and your colleagues, you sit with our country's flag, you do not represent our country's interests.
Of cooperation and unity, none but those on the political extremes would question that we are stronger together, safer together than ever we are apart.
You received some criticism this afternoon for your comment, British jobs for British workers, but you can brush that aside, because from the moment you said it, I don't think anybody seriously thought that you would ever, as a British Prime Minister, put the interests of British workers above that of your European dream. And my goodness me, you showed that this afternoon. It's just a pity that apart from UKIP, virtually nobody seems to have bothered to turn up to listen to you. No, you're very popular here. You're very popular indeed, because within a few days of the Irish saying no to the Lisbon Treaty, you had rammed that treaty through the British Parliament, and you've done it breaking a specific... You see, I said you were popular. You did it breaking a specific manifesto pledge that you would give the British people a referendum on the constitutional treaty. Shame on you, Prime Minister, for doing that. You have devalued democracy in our country. You have devalued the trust that voters have got in you as a British Prime Minister. But of course we know the reason why. The reason why is that we would have voted no. You said in your speech that none but those on the extremes oppose European Union. Well, that may be right amongst professional career politicians, but a clear majority of the British people want us to have friendship and free trade with the European Union, but do not want to be members of this political union. And as far as the economy is concerned, you've told us that somehow you're the economic guru. You're the man that can save the world. Well, I remember very well your first big act as Chancellor, when you sold 400 metric tons of gold on the world's exchanges at $275 an ounce. At today's valuation, that would be $10 billion higher. But it isn't just the fact you got it wrong, because we can all get it wrong. It was the fact that you announced in advance how much you were going to sell and on what day you were going to sell it. It was an error so basic that the average A-level economics student, even in these educationally devalued times, wouldn't have done. And we haven't heard an apology. Your government has apologised for the Amritsar massacre. You've apologised for slavery. You've apologised for virtually everything. Will you please apologise for what you did as British Chancellor, and then perhaps we might just listen to you. Thank you. Told that when we had a president, we'd see a giant global political figure. The man that would be the political leader for 500 million people. The man that would represent all of us on the world stage. The man whose job was so important that, of course, you're paid more than President Obama. Well, I'm afraid what we got was you. And I'm sorry, but after that performance earlier that you gave, and I don't want to be rude, but you know, really, you have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy is not popular with you lot. And what mechanism do the peoples of Europe have to remove you? Is this European democracy? Well, I sense though that you're competent and capable and dangerous, and I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. Perhaps that's because you come from Belgium, which of course is pretty much a non-country. But since you took over, we've seen Greece reduced to nothing more than a protectorate. Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying, we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better. Let's have a Europe where we sit down together, where we have a free trade agreement, where we agree minimum standards on work, on the environment. We can do all of these things without a European Commission, without a European Parliament, and without a European Court of Justice. We've done it in security terms with NATO. Yes, it'll mean you'll lose your job, Mr. Barroso, but apart from that, why can't we do things as mature democracies? Yes, I want you sacked, Mr. Schulz, as well. I want you all fired. We can do those things, and that is a positive way forward. By taking away from people their ability to govern themselves and transferring that power to the European Commission, we're headed for a Europe of rebellion and violence. Let's take the democratic route.
This debate, at last, it's taken a very long time. Just imagine, though, we weren't debating whether we should stay or leave. Just imagine we were debating whether we should join the European Union. And I put it to you that what we ought to do is vote yes in a referendum to join a club that will cost us £55 million a day as a membership fee, that will give us thousands of new laws over which our own parliament and you, the electorate, can make no difference. It'll mean an open border, unconditionally, to 485 million people from across the whole of Europe, many of them from very poor countries, and they can come here and work and live and settle and bring their families and do as they wish. And it would also mean that we would have to cut our links with other parts of the world, the Commonwealth, the Anglosphere, and many other parts of the world, because we'd lose the ability to make our own trade deals. I know the result of that referendum, you wouldn't join it. The debate here today is between a tired status quo, defending a crumbling European Union that frankly isn't working anymore, and a fresh approach which says, let's be friendly with Europe, let's trade with Europe, but not be governed by their institutions.
I wonder if I can read you the words from a very prominent politician back in 2008. It's time to give the British people a real referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union. And there we are, there's a very fresh-faced carefree politician there in that poster. Why are we still waiting?
Well, if everyone can read the small print, which I suspect you can't, what it said, no, I don't mean the small print, I mean in the leaflet.
When you answer a question like that by saying 3 million jobs are at risk, you show that, like virtually everybody at Westminster, you've never run your own company, you've never had a proper job in the real world, you are part of this political bubble that picked up a piece of research that was produced 10 years ago by a guy who himself now says all he said was the jobs are linked to trade in Europe, they're not at risk.
This is what I said.
And all of you, you all do it. Tories do it, Labour do it, the big banks do it, the multinationals do it, and the truth is this. We sell, in terms of manufactured products, about £100 billion worth of goods every year to Europe. It's about 40% of our overseas sales. It is quite important. No doubt it's important. Declining every year, but important. But the point is this. They sell us roughly £150 billion worth of goods every single year. The United Kingdom, this is extraordinary, the United Kingdom is now the Eurozone's biggest export market in the world.
I was told in 2009, when we came second in the European elections, it was a protest vote, we'd never repeat it. And then last year, in the English county elections, we got nearly a quarter of the vote, and that was a protest. And we almost won the Eastleigh by-election, and that was a protest. And now we're going to top a national poll, something that a so-called insurgent party has never done in British history, and that's a protest. All I would say is this. It's beginning to resemble a permanent protest.
4 words. Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg.
Goodbye.
I came in here in 1999 and sat at the back, and there were only 3 of us in the whole building who thought our member state should leave the European Union. But it's grand projects that have turned the tide of public opinion, in particular the introduction of the euro. You know, I warned you, we all warned you, that it would not work for the Mediterranean countries. And I hope that on June the 23rd, it isn't just Independence Day for the United Kingdom. I hope it brings an end to this entire project, and in a few years' time, we could be sovereign, democratic nation-states that work and trade together.
Well, at 20 minutes to 5, we can now say the decision taken in 1975 by this country to join the common market has been reversed by this referendum to leave the EU. We are absolutely clear now that there is no way that the Remain side can win.
Watch and listen carefully. This is history in the making.
The British people have spoken, and the answer is we're out.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Change the face of Europe!
And these were the celebrations just moments before the BBC called the result.
This will be a victory for real people, a victory for ordinary people, a victory for decent people.
It has been a very long journey. Not at every stage of the way an easy one, although most of it, I have to say, has been tremendous fun. But when I think back to when I first stood for UKIP, well, in fact, when I first stood for anybody, in the Eastleigh by-election, which took place in 1994, and I managed to scrape past screaming Lord Such by a massive 164 votes, and to have gone from that to being part of a national campaign that attracted 17.5 million votes for Brexit says to me that, tough though it's been at times, it has certainly all been worth it. I came into politics from business because I believed that this nation should be self-governing. I have never been, and I've never wanted to be, a career politician. My aim in being in politics was to get Britain out of the European Union. That is what we voted for in that referendum 2 weeks ago, and that is why I now feel that I've done my bit, that I couldn't possibly achieve more than we managed to get in that referendum, and so I feel it's right that I should now stand aside as leader of UKIP.